You're now listening to the show about the shit in life that's just a bit too much, from the perspective of stand-up comics. With our hosts, Carmelo Bongiovi and Ken Krantz. This week's topic, Seabound. With our guest, John Moses. This is A Bit Too Much.
We've had like I wouldn't say like necessarily a recurring theme, but we've done on this show a few times sort of like these like sort of like life transitions and like going into something, trying new things. And Ken told me about your sort of new venture.
Yeah.
And doing and what I'm so fascinated by this because so you stand-up comic, obviously, are now performing on cruises.
No, I've been working on cruise ships for the last 6 months as a air quotes cruise comic.
Yeah.
And I think probably most people that are familiar with me and my comedy would think that I'm the last candidate.
Literally.
That's what Ken said.
Literally the last candidate.
Yeah.
I would have thought it could happen for me before it happened for John. And it's,
yeah, I would agree.
But when I said that to Carmelo, he immediately was like, oh, he's dirty. And I'm like, well, he's actually not super dirty. It's just very raw, very adult topics.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Not cruise friendly.
And you get, and the
or what you would think of as cruise friendly, like family friendly.
When you hear cruise ship, you think of like a boat hack. You think of
that was years ago. That was the stigma for sure. Like being a boat comic was I think a very different thing than they've done now, and I think it's definitely taken a transformation over the past. I want to say like 5-10 years, right? Like where really great comics do take these gigs. And so first of all, before we even get to why you wouldn't even be a likely candidate, how did that even come about?
All right. So first of all, let me just say, like, I don't know that there are any really great comics who are doing these gigs. There's some good ones.
Try to be nice. I mean,
but
not. I think my point is though, not like
what
you would have thought as like truly you would have thought of like just hacks doing boat 20 years ago.
Listen, it has been my experience thus far that I've come across some of those guys who you would definitely characterize as that and put in that column. Like, oh man, this guy's been doing this for 30 years and I don't think he's written a joke in that time,
Yeah.
But then there's also some really good comics who are just like, dude, this is where it's at, and there's some regular money and some regular crowds. And listen, I've played so many shows where there's 8 people in the audience at a Saturday night and you're like, oh dude, why am I doing this?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And here every show's 150 to 200 people. So
yeah. How long are you out there for on a typical cruise? Like how many days are you out there?
So I'll be out there for 5 to 6 days at a clip. And then I come home. Now, there are guys that'll be out there for 5 or 6 days, get off a ship, go on another ship, get off that ship, go on another ship, and that's their life. But I got a kid, so I got to come back and punch in and be a dad and all that stuff.
Yeah. How old's your kid, by the way?
She's 9.
Right. Yeah. So you got to, still the need to be super active. Right.
Yeah.
Present. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there are guys out there that don't, but it doesn't work for my situation.
No, of course. And
so like you'll be gone at 5 to 6 days at a clip. And then I'll tell you the schedule a little bit, right? So you're generally doing 5 or 6 shows in a 3 or 4 day window. So the first day is travel, and then you'll have like 3 days. And then the last day, you're basically off the boat at 9 a.m. Now, some days on those travel days, you'll get on there and there's no show. And you're like, great, you can settle in. Because sometimes the travel, I'll be up at 3 a.m. And then by the time I get on the boat, it's 3 p.m. I'm working on somewhere between 2 to 4 hours sleep. Mm-hmm. And maybe you can get a nap for an hour and the show starts at 7, unless there's no show that night, so, and then you'll go and it'll be wild. Like sometimes it'll be like, all right, you got 1 show the first night, 2 shows the next night, 2 shows the next night. Great. That's pretty regular schedule.
Yeah.
Or 1 no show the first night, 1 show the next night, 3 shows the next night.
Oh, wow.
2 shows the next night. Sometimes there'll be no show the first night, 1 show the next day, 0 shows the next day, 4 shows the next day. I mean,
Oh god,
there's no consistency in any of it.
It's like no rhyme or reason. It sounds.
There's no, it's just like this is what that entertainment director wanted to do that day.
Yeah, how many people are boarding like on the cruise? Not necessarily in the show. Like how big are these cruise line? Like how big of a cruise line is it?
I don't know. I would say there's never less than 1,500 people, and probably sometimes there's up to 3,000.
Yeah, right. And so, are you getting a lot of repeat in the audience, or are you getting just fresh crowd? Like there's enough to give you a pretty fresh crowd.
Here's where you got to do the heavy lifting, because it's like you need the half-hour clean family show, and then you need two separate half-hour rated R shows. So you need 90 minutes of material. And the problem is, it's like, if you work in a comedy club and you're headlining a club for the weekend, you're just banging out the same 45 minutes, 2 to 5 nights, and you're like, oh, that crowd didn't get this, I got to tweak that joke or whatever, right? You're rinsing the crowd every time.
Yeah.
This time, the crowd might be coming to every single one of your shows, so you really got to compartmentalize your material.
A completely different show, not a tweaked show. You need a completely different. You need 3 completely different sets. Yeah,
right. Some people might sprinkle in, the same opener to those shows. You know what I mean?
Right.
But generally speaking, you need to keep. It's not even the amount of material. It's just like mentally, where am I in a set? I haven't been doing it long enough to be comfortable enough to, you know what I mean? Like I'm always thinking like, ooh, did this joke go on that set? Like I just got to make sure I'm on.
It's a little confusing. Yeah. I could see that. I could certainly see that. I mean, I'll have sets where by the end I forgot what I did in the one set.
Right.
Like a half hour in or something. You're like, wait, did I do that already? Right. Like
normally it's like if you do 2 shows in a Saturday, you're like, oh God, or
your head's spinning. Yeah.
You get that midnight show on a Saturday, and by that 3rd show, you're like, did I tell this show? You don't know where you are in the set.
Yeah. And now, do you overall though? Like, are you finding it great? Is there a comfort to like like you said, you have like the built-in audience? Is it less comfortable or more? I guess my point is it less comfortable or more comfortable compared to like the club? Like, do you feel like a little bit of a contentness with it, or is it like exciting?
So it's first of all, let me just start and say that this was 100% born out of desperation. I didn't have this on my list of things to do in comedy.
Yeah, it wasn't a bucket list.
Do Howard Stern, go to the Playboy Mansion, and do cruises.
Yeah, right.
It's just like, oh God, I need to make this happen. It's like really the longest cruise or clean set that I have ever done prior to the half-hour clean set on the cruise was Kevin Israel's outdoor show in Red Bank 1 week before. And I got off 20 minutes and I was like, oh, that was pretty good. Maybe I can actually do this. You know?
Right.
And I had spent a month leading up to that, just going over that set, in my room, in my kitchen, whatever, going over that set, and then I got there and it was okay. So there was like, I used to do this club in New York, LOL.
Yeah.
And LOL was
I remember that. LOL.
The shittiest club
horrible
in New York.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And to give you an idea of how shit this club was, they turned Bill Burr away for a guest spot when he just walked up on it one day.
Yeah.
Oh my
God.
Oh
yeah. They would invite you in. I don't know if you ever experienced. Were you there like early on in your career, or did you go there like often throughout the years?
No, sort of in and out.
Because I remember being very.
You don't need it. I've suffered through 3 locations of LOL.
There were 3. I remember one. I don't remember 3. I don't remember multiple locations. But so I remember, and it's like, you're kind of a few blocks from like where Caroline's was over there, and you're like, oh, this is like a great, there's real comedy happening, and then you've got this place, right?
And listen, all those clubs do the same shit. I mean, Caroline's didn't, but like Stand Up New York was like, Chris Rock's going to be here tonight. Louis C.K.'s going to be here tonight.
Oh, yeah.
The difference is, at least you're going into a comedy club, not a fucking broom closet with a logo on a bed sheet.
Yeah. That was one of those places where you would get barked outside for a show you were on. Like nobody, like the barkers didn't know who we've talked about before. They didn't even know you were on. Like I'm walking to the club and they're like, best comics in New York. I'm like, I promise you that is not true.
Yeah,
because I suck at this point of my career and I'm going out there.
Like at the end with LOL, and there was so much, dog shittedness
Yeah.
that happened at that club, including, underpay, cut the pay, didn't pay, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
at least they told the barkers, like, name the comedians who are on the show. So there would be like guys on the street who would be like, oh yeah, John Moses is on the show. And you're like, it's me, motherfucker.
Yeah.
But like, you wouldn't even say that. You'd just be like, no, thank you.
No, thank you. Yeah. You give them the same disrespect that everyone else gave them. Just keep on, Brad. Yeah.
I never worked LOL, but I know it must have sucked because I remember asking Moses, like, can you get me in? And he was like, I could, but I like you.
Yeah. Well, there's
I don't think you want me to.
It was that period of time where Midtown had those places. Like Midtown had those clubs. There was a few like that where they were like real seedy fucking places right up, but like close enough to Times Square.
New York Comedy Club before the new owners.
Before the new owner.
When that was.
Do you remember that bathroom at the old New York Comedy Club?
Yes.
It was like the most horrifying bathroom in the world, but it was always a great club. Like, no, you don't think so? Like, I feel like even when it was run down, it was great. Like, or at least maybe in my mind, as someone who wanted to be in that scene, it felt great because it was this is like down.
But it was still a club.
It was still a club. It wasn't,
so it still had some cachet of like, at least I'm past at a club.
Yeah. It didn't maybe feel premiere, but it wasn't LOL. Like, it certainly was never that. It still felt like that you could get some great comics are still going to walk.
Yeah, there were still some great comics there, and maybe they're taking a downfall. They had pictures of comics on the wall who you at least regarded as comics
that you could recognize. Yeah.
Right.
I would when I first started, I would like do bringer shows.
Yeah, of course.
At New York Comedy Club, and my friends would call it, "Oh, that's the place with the 2-drink maximum." Because the service was so shitty. They we wanted more than 2 drinks, but they never even came back. So that's all that we always called that place.
And then the later shows had such a drunk crowd coming in. Thank God they didn't serve them more drinks, right? But so John, you said something before that made me think. Like, I remember hearing from like people. When I was just like looking for advice all the time, it was like 15 years ago, and people were like, you need clean stuff. And I always struggled, especially I wasn't versatile enough. I still barely am in terms of writing clean material, but like I really wasn't versatile enough to like go like, okay, I could definitely get like a clean half hour. You know what I mean? And it felt like that to me always felt like especially years ago, like felt such a daunting thing. Like, I have to write about things that I don't particularly find funny. Right? Because that's what it felt like to me. It's like I wasn't finding at that point when people were telling me that, I wasn't finding anything super clean or just like, family friendly. I wasn't finding any of that funny, or I wasn't finding clean, funny angles. Like how obviously you're the point you're doing this, you're seasoned and you can do it. But like, do you still struggle with the clean stuff as someone who writes like a little bit more real, raw, dark?
So first of all, maybe 1 year ago, I've been trying to get on these cruises for a couple of years. My buddy was trying to make it happen.
Yeah.
Right. And I was telling another buddy of mine, that I was trying. He goes, "Oh, how much clean time you got?" I said, "I don't know, 8 minutes." And he just laughed. My buddy Tyler, who I co-host Fight Stories with, he laughed because, "Buddy, you've been doing this for 20 years. You've got 8 minutes."
Yeah.
I was just sitting there like, "Oh, 8 minutes. That's pretty good.
That's pretty good." That's a guest, dude. That's a guest spot.
And at that time, that 8 minutes was theoretical. It's not like I was running around doing that 8 minutes. I was like, I think I can just.
You've got to
8 minutes.
You've got to dig deep in the vault for the 8 minutes. Yeah.
And it's like, but I'm a dad. I've got some stuff that I could definitely talk about. And have you ever written something? The way he sort of explained it to me was like, hey, sometimes you'll write something and it's like a clean joke, but it doesn't fit somewhere in your set. You know? Like you just running your set right now. Yeah. And he's like, or you think it's, fucking whack or something, whatever. He's like, you just store it in a file, dude. Just store it in a file.
Yeah.
So I started doing that a little bit. But also it's like, I'm a father. I can do 10 minutes on parenting, easy.
Yeah.
When I sit down and think about it, and that's the stuff that goes there. And listen, I've still got some stuff that's clean that I'd say on that show that it's like, might get a little bit of like, oh.
It pushes a little bit.
It pushes it a little bit, but it's still, it's fine. And like, those are definitely, some of those land the hardest on that show. You know, when I did my first show, I went up there. So what I was saying was, I did that shithole LOL.
Yeah.
And like, these people were shameless. Like, they would tell a family of 4, like, oh no, yeah, it's going to be a PG show. And it's like, they're going to a show. First of all, it's 11 o'clock at night on a Friday. Like, I don't know, maybe they're on West Coast time.
Yeah, the tourists.
But they walk in there with their family, and you're like, yo, you know that, you know, drug addicted Barker just lied to them to fleece them out of $60.
Yeah, never relayed to the comics that maybe they're like, that's not even there's no communication past him just saying.
Well, they did have like an offering of like a PG show. I just never did those shit.
Right.
But you'd have kids stumble in. So once in a while you'd be performing in front of kids. So it wasn't a complete culture shock. But like, I walked in there on that ship, and my first show there was 13 kids in the front row.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had literal nightmares of like performing at my old high school. And as I'm walking up to the microphone, I look out and there's like 2 kids. And I'm like, what? They didn't tell me there's going to be a kid. And then I look at another row and there's like 3 kids. And then slowly the theater starts populating with children. And I'm telling you, I wake out of my sleep. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. How am I going to do that?
This was a living nightmare. And then I walk up on stage and I got 13 kids staring in front of me, and I could just feel my heart blasting out of my chest.
Isn't that crazy that like you can go and do those gritty, raw comedy clubs and feel so at home, and you're like, I could fucking
comedy
get through
clubs.
any.
I used to host an amateur strip club in the Bronx. I watched the guy get a plate broken over his face right beside me.
And by the way, but my point is, Fearless doing those things.
No, I know,
right?
That's what
and then a bunch of kids get in there, you're like, oh God, I don't know how to do this.
Because I can handle the unpredictability of a man. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
a child is like, oh God, what would I do?
You're gonna ruin this child.
I need this job, you know?
Yeah.
They're also, but kids, like my daughter on the regular says way meaner shit than any heckler has ever told me.
Yeah. But at the same time, like in a comedy setting where now you're responsible, you're like, it's not a back and forth, and maybe they're there with their parents. You're like, oh, I feel like that's a horrifying part too. Like, I'm now going to say things in front of this kid that the parents are going to hear me say in front of this kid. Like, there's an element to it that's kind of I feel like that is scary. Like a bunch of kids coming in. Yeah.
So Thanksgiving, I had the most fun I've had on a show, and it was in a room full of kids. Like, I was stepping over them to get to the stage, and it was the most fun. Like, there was 2 of those shows like that. The first one, I was like a little, but then I had 45 minutes to go back on stage and run the same set. So I just, made some notes. I was like, oh, I didn't say that. Went on there, super comfortable, nailed it, and it was so much fun.
Yeah.
And I'm also in a place in my comedy now where it's like, I kind of do want to be able to do comedy that my daughter could watch.
Sure.
At some point. It ain't there yet.
Yeah.
And I remember why somebody asked Eddie Murphy, like, why he made Pluto Nash or some garbage. And he was like, man, I just want to make some stuff for my kids. And I was like, I kind of understand that.
Yeah. There's also something I think, like, do you think there's something also creatively, it's like pushing you to get to start writing or thinking about things you just wouldn't have on your own?
I mean, listen,
it's a challenge,
definitely making me. It's a challenge. It's making me use making me flex that muscle I normally wouldn't have flexed.
Yeah,
and also, I've probably gotten myself fucking booted from a lot of opportunities because I've just been too. And again, it's not even. I don't even think it's dirty, but it's just like raw, edgy, maybe a little in your face. So I can use a little mellowing out. So this is like a little bit of that force. I mean, 6 months before I started doing these cruises, I walked maybe 70 people from a theater in Pennsylvania. They were leaving in droves.
Have you walked anyone on a cruise show and then had to see them?
Well, so that's the thing. That's the other thing. It's like, you have a bad set. You can slink off to your car and maybe you suffer the indignity of a couple of people being like, that comic stacked, Yeah. And depending on where you are in your confidence level, maybe you're like, no, I thought I was pretty good. Or maybe you just hide in your shirt and you but it's over. It's like, you eat one here, you got to see them at breakfast tomorrow.
Yeah, it's like online at the buffet.
Yeah, man. that's what I keep thinking. That's where my mind goes, is like, what happens after those shows the next morning at the buffet? Like, oh shit!
Or you'll blow one and you'll rip one, so you'll have people like, oh, and you'll have people come up to be like, yeah, bro, you're the best.
Right? They're like, did we see the same guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the great thing about like the ego rubs is like, if you're killing shows, like you're famous on that shit. For
sure. You're like,
people are like, oh, bro. You know?
Yeah, you're the.
I've had kids come up to me wanting to take pictures.
Oh, that's funny.
You can't. All right, this one, you cannot promote this episode with this story. You know,
fair. Okay.
In fact, most of these, and promote with a fight stories clip. But anyway, this kid comes up to me, and the mom's like, "Can we take a picture?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." And this kid comes up to me and wraps himself around my leg and puts his head on my leg, like right close by my dick. And I'm like, hey, how about you let me get down?
How about you don't do that?
I just like push him off and like crouched and took a picture with him.
Yeah.
Like, that's all I need is this fucking kid smiling, resting on my leg next to the imprint of my fucking dog. You know?
Yeah, dude, I won't even pee next to a kid in a public bathroom, like in the urinal next to them. I'm always like, oh God, the last thing I want to do is ever be mistaken for a creep. So, but just because you had a show.
Yeah, you pee at some random stall, there's 6 open, some kid walks up to the one beside you and starts peeing.
You're like, they're going to arrest me. Yeah. But so the explanation of that, like you had a show the day before and he just like loved you? Was that what happened? Or did he?
Yeah, I mean, that might have been right off stage. Like, you know, they'll come off stage and these kids will be like, oh, man. You know, even though most of the jokes are missing them.
Right.
You know, they're still like, you know, everybody's having a good time. And
a kid maybe is a little bit enamored by that. Like
sure.
It's almost
and there's they can probably relate to something, you know.
I can see you doing well with kids. Like, so Moses, his daughter and mine are good friends. Like we hang out a lot. Yeah. And you've got like big kid energy when you're around kids.
Well, that's like the one on Thanksgiving was like that. Like I went up there and I, you know, said a few things and, you know, had a couple of jokes aimed at the kids and it like brought them in real quick. And so that's the other thing. It's like, I legitimately like kids.
Yeah.
We'll promote it with that. We'll promote it with that.
Yeah, I legitimately like kids, and then we'll cut in the kid's head was right by my dick.
The dick beside the kid's
We'll like slow it down too to make your voice all creepy. I legitimately like kids. Yeah. I don't know. I just, you know, I do think there is something in terms of like I don't know, like scratching a creative itch or challenging yourself that's got to be a little bit of a, like, you know, proud of yourself moment, like, oh, I can do that thing I probably thought I couldn't do a year ago.
Oh man, I was like, dude, I've been like pigeonholing myself and putting myself in a box for 20 years. And I was like, oh, how many of these opportunities, you know, did I chuck myself away from when I actually could have did it, you know?
I think we all do that, right? We all turn down things we're like, that's not my lane. You know?
Yeah.
We definitely, right? Like, because you're just like
Ken,
that's not
like Ken in Black Rooms.
It was one. I had one bad show. I had one bad show where they booed me off the stage.
Yeah, and he never went back.
Yeah. And Ken hugged one of the guys and his head was right by his dick. And
I'll call talent right now and get you on a show for you.
I will bring comedian Lord back from the dead. I will reopen Mangoes in Rahway, New Jersey.
Yeah. What's scarier, performing for a room full of kids or performing a black room? I'd rather not do the kids thing.
Kids feel scary.
Yeah, kids does feel scary.
1,000%.
I can see it's weird. Like I can see you doing well with kids. It's the idea of like the nice suburban parents that are taking their kids on a cruise.
Yeah,
that come to see you.
Right. Like when they're at the family
that's gotta
show.
be. And then also like,
I ain't working that cruise line.
This isn't a Disney cruise. Yeah.
When you first start, is there anybody from the cruise? Like, does the entertainment director come watch? Like, is there any pressure of like, oh God, I have to
100% every time.
Oh yeah.
Is there a constant pressure throughout the cruise of like, hey, do you get notes?
So I think you can get reviews. So that first cruise I did, I really did well, like all things considered, you know, even that first family show, like I got through it and like I got great notes and great reviews. Like, I can't believe this is his first time, blah, 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 blah. You know, since I've had a couple of ones where it was like a little hit or miss, you know, so I'm sure I've got some, you know, varying reports or whatever. But yeah, you're always sort of at the, you know, it's just like going to any comedy club. You know, you live and die by the comment cards.
Yeah.
Until you're the guy putting asses in seats, you know?
Yeah. I just I guess my mind went to like, do you get a lot of scrutiny for content? I guess is my point, more so than like, well, like good or bad, because that's all a comedy club cares about. Like, did you make them laugh? Are you good? Like, even if you had one bad show, you still got like.
Well, I think so. I mean, listen, it's one thing to get scrutiny when you're doing well or pretty good. You know, because people can be like, oh, no, people are having a great time. There was just that one guy who got offended about something. And, you know, you've probably, whoever's the one giving the review is probably on board with that. But if you're stinking and you're getting those reviews, it's a different story, you know.
Just drop you off the next port. Like, just get off the boat here.
I haven't been helicoptered off the boat yet.
Right. Have you had any, like, bad experiences? Like, on, like, just crazy bad experiences? Or have they all been pretty...
No, just but like, you know, shows that you were like, oh, that wasn't a good one. And then it's just like, it's just the feeling of that, you know, like, you know how it feels when you don't have a great show.
Yeah.
You're like driving home and you're like, oof, you know, I mean, the good news is you get a pretty fast turnaround to shake it off. The bad news is, you know, if it's the next day, you know, you just don't eat with the guests, eat with the crew.
Room service.
Yeah, just get room service.
Yeah. I'll go under the ship and eat with the Olympic Village.
Well, you know, my mind goes, I've only actually been like a vacation. I've only been on one cruise, and I felt very much, this is a long time ago. It's like my wife and I, when we were dating, it was like our first vacation together. We took a cruise, and I felt like, now granted, it could have been that line and stuff like that, but I felt like, all right, there's an audience, there's not a comedy audience. It's just like, there's a type of person that does cruises a lot. There's like a type of traveler that does cruises. There's like a comfort in cruises, I think. Like, you know, you have your set dining times, and you have your, like, you know, your energy, especially if you go on, like, if you have like your frequent cruiser mile, whatever they're called, you know, for cruises, like you have like your points, and you're always going the same line. You know where the dining room is, you know the set times, you know the ports. There's a comfortability. That's why sometimes it's like much older crowds on cruises too, or a lot of or like families that go over year, they go to the same cruise line, right? And so that's probably the comedy shows, maybe the music acts too, but the comedy shows have to be one of the things that for those cruisers, like, it's because I feel like for some of them, they're like, oh, this is my home. This is my vacation home. This is where I go. The comedy shows are probably one of the few things that change for them.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, yeah, exactly. It's like, you know, whatever the 80s rock show is, you might have people coming in there, you know, singing things differently, but they're probably going to hit a lot of the same notes.
Same
notes.
Yeah.
So, and it's funny because it's the same thing. It's like, you know, we're always the cheapest ones to throw up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
If the boat's really moving, they cancel the dance act because it's like becomes a liability issue, you know. Mm-hmm. But the comics still got to go up. They're like, just go up there and shuffle your feet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
like we're the guys who, you know, offer the most variety, and it's like, you know, it doesn't matter what's happening. You're performing.
Yeah, and you're also the guys that are going to give probably the most unique experience on that boat.
Yeah, and there's people that come up to like, you know, the comedy's my favorite part. You know, that's not always
well. Because it's unpredictable compared to everything else. Yeah, they're right. Comedy is so much more unpredictable than another entertainment form. Like,
and I think also there's probably, you know, obviously I'm a little biased, but even with the 30-year boat hacks and stuff like that, I just feel like there's a like a minimum standard for the comedy shows, whereas you're getting like, I've seen some singers on the ships. It was like, oh my God, that guy's amazing. Like, yeah, literally the last time on the ship, there was a guy, like a lounge singer. I was like, this guy should be opening for Chris Stapleton right now.
Yeah.
And then I've seen people who I was like, this is a karaoke act.
Mm-hmm.
that I think I could sing better than. Whether I can or I can't, I'm sure a lot of the people felt the same way. Whereas like comedy, and then also it's just like, good comedy. There's nothing like good comedy, even like the best comedy movie. When you're talking about like sitting there and like having good laughs and being thoroughly entertained, there's nothing like good live comedy. You know what I mean?
Deeper on it's emotional, like intellect levels, emotional levels.
Laughs, like just the laughs per minute. It's just hitting.
Well, the bombs too. Like if you're a bad singer, music still fills the room. You're not in silence. You know what I mean? Right. Where like when you bomb, I mean it's not, you're not only feeling it as the performer, you're feeling it as the audience. Like the audience doesn't want to sit through a bomb either.
Yeah.
Everyone in that room is miserable when a bomb is happening. Right. Except for the other comics watching their friend bomb. That's great.
Instrumental,
The only people having fun during a bomb are the comics' friends who's bombing.
Yeah. And on the cruises you're alone. So
true. Yeah. It's well, so do you plan on doing these for a bit longer, or is this kind of like, is this like an experiment for you, or you're like, you know what, money's good, the opportunity's good, just ride it out?
I would listen at this point. I would do them, a few times a year, indefinitely. Yeah. They're cool. I'd like to bring my kid on a few of them and like experience that.
Yeah.
I would like to be at the point where I don't rely on them. So yeah, dude, I'm not doing this out of
love for cruises.
This item. This is sheer desperation. But I didn't even have health insurance up to 2 weeks ago. I'd be sick or have an ailment and wait till I get on the ship to see a doctor. He's like, when did this start? It's been like this for a week. And meanwhile, I'm like, I don't know, 15 minutes ago. What do you think?
Yeah.
Started in
I've got some guy with a Honduras accent looking at me,
Yeah. There's boat perks. You get 3 square meals,
Yeah.
You get medical. I remember, so I was on a cruise once, or the one cruise I went on, and our waiter, we just had like the same waiter every time because we had like an assigned table, right? Like the dining times. And I remember this guy, I still don't know if it was like he was playing it up for tip, but the waiter just told us this like heartbreaking story because, the wait staff, a lot of times, those guys they'll go on like, 12 straight cruises. Yeah. Like they'll just go back on.
They've got 6-month contract.
Yeah. And so they'll leave their families behind. And it's a lot like there's some people from like really
sometimes start a new one. All right, go ahead.
on the cruise.
This is my boat family.
Well, sure. When you look at,
I got a family in each port.
Yeah. But like, so I remember our waiter was like, yeah, I got 2 kids at home. One's a newborn. I haven't even met the newborn yet. I'm like, holy shit.
That guy's running a bit. That newborn's 8 years old. He's just running a bit.
I know. It's like, but he was so good at it that I was like, I do feel like he's just like, oh my God, this poor guy, I got to tip him really well.
Yeah.
Like, at the same, there's a chance it was true.
His newborn's 18 and working the other side of the restaurant.
Yeah. He was probably the busboy on the same fucking table.
No, I don't doubt that it's true at all.
But it worked on me because I was like, well, how do I know if he's lying? That sounds sad enough. Regardless, he's on this boat for 6 months. Yeah, this is tough.
This is what I will say. These guys work their asses off.
Yeah, all day. Right. It's all day.
They're from everywhere in the world except America. And they bust their ass and bust like 14 hours and they're like doing it with a smile. Like, I'll get on the ship and everybody in the staff is like, if I have a question, I'll just ask somebody randomly. They're like, oh, let me show you. And they stop doing whatever they're doing, show me whatever. Like, they work their ass off. So, newborn or not, these people definitely deserve tips if you can. And I always be like, please tip these people. I'm like, I say a couple bucks won't hurt you, but if they go back to their country and buy a roof, I don't think it goes over great.
Yeah.
Themselves, but it's
No, yeah, for sure. Because regardless, like the dining, let's say they're a waiter, they're in that dining hall 3 times a day, but they're also like, you see them, they're at the buffet cleaning up. There's not like they have a separate buffet staff, right? No. Not like they have a staff for each thing. That staff is just fucking doing everything. They're doing everything the whole boat. And boats are gross sometimes. Sometimes boats could get a little gross because you're stuck on there,
That would be the hardest part of that job for me, would just be like having to be nice to everyone.
Yeah.
Like just all the time.
Just like acknowledge people. Ken just having to like be human for the whole time he's there.
They'd be like, "Hey, can you tell us how to get to the disco?" I'd be like, "Why are you asking me?"
Yeah,
because you fucking work here.
I know. That's the other thing. People will ask me questions because like I've got a name tag on. I'm like, buddy, I'm just entertainment. I don't know shit.
Yeah. Ken's like, I want to walk you not only out of the show, but right off this fucking boat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, John, thanks so much for coming out. Do you have any, sort of like anything you want to plug, or do you want to plug you don't have to plug the cruises. If you can plug the cruises, you can plug anything. You're like, they have a built-in audience. They don't need me.
Nobody's buying a Carnival ticket because I said I'm going to be there in April.
Oh man. We heard John Moses on a bit too much. We got to go to Argentina and catch him on this boat.
You want to blow our vacation days? You know what?
Tell us about you.
I'm at the Dojo of Comedy. I'm running my little special before I go up to Toronto. So
what date is it?
February 20th. It's a Thursday.
Nice.
Yeah, this will be out before that.
So come check that. Me and my boy Tyler Morrison are doing fight stories right now. That's back. So we got all new episodes.
Where can they hear that?
Everywhere that they got podcast. Wherever you download, wherever you listen to your podcast, Spotify, iTunes, and everything else. And then we also run the eps on YouTube. So check that out. Fight stories. For those of you who don't know, we talk to everybody. We've got like former boxing world champs, MMA guys, NHL guys, but that I've been in like 30 street fights and lost roughly 14 or 15 of those. Oof. So like we just talk to anybody with a funny fight story. So literally one of my favorite episodes, this guy, Tyler's buddy's dad, this guy rigged me, and I think he's an Irish guy, maybe an English. No, I think he's an Englishman. He put some guy's head through a popcorn maker at a bar while his 5 and 6-year-old sons were eating chicken wings because the guy was bad-mouthing a waitress. Like this, those types of tales are.
By the way, what an embarrassing thing to have your head put through. You know what I mean? Like you get fucking a bottle over the head, you get hit with a bat, you get your face bashed into the bar. Like, oh, what happened here? I went first through the fucking glass of a popcorn maker, and I got burns now. That's an embarrassing get beat up story. I'd rather get a wedgie.
So I got punched out, when I was like a 19-year-old, maybe even younger, because I think we were like using fake IDs to drink up in Canada, and the drinking age was 19. Yeah. So I got punched out in a bar. My buddy was there with me. He starts lipping off. He's a scrawny little puke, and he's about to get his head kicked in from grown men. And then some other guy comes up and is like, guys, like, leave them alone. They're kids. They shouldn't even be here. Yeah. So we all get kicked out. Me, my buddy, the guy that stuck up for us, and this like group of hooligan men that were going to punch us out. So we're outside. I look over. The guy that stuck up for us is on the ground getting pummeled. I look over. My buddy who started the fight had hightailed it to the other end of the parking lot. I could see him up there. And I felt bad. I was like, oh, man, I got to help this guy. So I went over to the guy who was on top of the guy who was helping us out, and I nailed him with everything I had. And I knocked that guy off of him and like freed up the other guy. And then for the next 30 seconds, like 3 guys pulled my shirt over my head and just were uppercutting me in the face. Yeah. And this is during the time where tearaway pants were very popular. So in addition to them like punching me in the face, one of them tried to rip my pants off. Oh God. I managed to hold on to my pants while getting punched out, but they were completely off. So I fell over like a short fence, and that's what ended it. But I'm walking down the beach, and I've got my tearaways in my hand. My face is completely swollen and bloody. Yeah. And some guy walks by with his girlfriend, and he goes, "Oh my God, look at this guy." And I said, "Buddy, I might be a mess right now, but I still got enough left over to punch you out." And as that happened, an ambulance pulled up, and I hopped in the back.
He was at another situation. Yeah. There is something so humiliating after getting. I've been jumped by multiple people before, and like when you walk out, especially in a party, like I was at a nightclub in Queens, and like that walk away when you look fucking rough. is really, it's not tough. It doesn't feel good. Like I walked away once from a nightclub, a place called DNA in Astoria that used to exist. And we all went flying down the stairs again. And just like 6 guys just fucking stomping on me. And I had a white button-down shirt on. And I had to walk home and my shirt had all foot marks, just like dirty foot marks all over it. And it was so goddamn embarrassing. And I was still trying to fucking keep it like, I was still trying to hit on a girl. Like I was just your night's over, you know? And everyone, as you're walking back to your car, everyone's like, this fucking idiot. It's such a humiliating thing.
I left a fight mid-fight to walk across the street and make out with a chick.
Smart choice, by the way. You know, I feel like getting your ass.
My roommate stepped in. I was losing. I was scrapping this guy who was huge, and I was losing. And then my roommate jumped in, and then I got up. I was like, "You got this." And I walked across the street and started making out with the chick. I came to on my couch the next day, and I had lost my sweater in that fight. And I was like, oh, man, I lost my sweater. He rounds the corner. He was like, God, I'm going to fucking kill you.
You know what, though? That is a rare redemption story. You know, at least you ended the night off. You know, You ended the night off well. Anyway, John, thanks so much for coming on. It's a bit too much podcast and all the social media and everything. You know, like, subscribe, comment. And thanks for coming on, dude.
All right. Thanks for having me, boys.
Yeah.
All right, John.
See you, man.